Hello, friends. Welcome to True Perspective. I'm Zenfi. The U.S. strikes against Iran have, in the past few days, really reached a peak. Since the war began, this is the highest point yet. Everyone thought that this time Trump was really going to push Iran to the brink. But yesterday, his tone suddenly changed again. He said, "I still haven't decided whether to launch a major strike." It seems like once again he's backing down at the last minute. What exactly is Trump thinking? Why, after being played by Iran so many times, hasn't he learned his lesson? Where's this war actually headed? And how much longer will it drag on? And how will it affect the global political landscape? So today we're going to talk about this very hot topic. We'll be discussing it with everyone, and we've also invited a very special guest. Our guest is someone everyone knows and loves, Professor Ming-Jia Sheng from the Department of Political Science at National Taiwan University. Welcome, Professor Meng.
Thank you, Ost. Hello to all our viewers.
Professor Ming, he has been active for many years on all the major mainstream media and political commentary platforms, known for his rigorous logic and sharp political insight. His insights are remarkable. You could say he's a guiding light in geopolitics for many people. Even more impressive is his ability to predict future developments. Take two examples. Before Xi Jinping took power in 2012, Professor Ming predicted that Xi Jinping would launch a major anti-corruption campaign to consolidate his power after taking office. Here's another example. About half a year before the U.S.-China trade war broke out in 2018, before that, Professor Ming predicted that the U.S.-China trade war was inevitable. Now that we have Professor Ming here, I want to quickly ask him on everyone's behalf. What is your view on the outcome of the war between the United States and Iran?
Speaking of predictions, well, I should put it this way. First, regarding the anti-corruption campaign, that was indeed something I predicted. Second, as for the trade war, actually, that was something a friend predicted. Then we discussed it, and maybe my thoughts were a bit more comprehensive, but the prediction ended up being more accurate. Of course, let's not talk about the smaller things, but rather the bigger trends, like what's happening in Hong Kong. In 2019, the anti-extradition bill protest broke out. Before that, I happened to meet a group of friends from Hong Kong, so after we talked, I said, I had a feeling because they also didn't know what was going to happen. Unsure of what was next, I followed my gut. On shows, I brought up Hong Kong. People asked why I'd even mention it since nothing was going on. I just said something might happen. But then, after the end of May and the beginning of June, there started to be some friction in Hong Kong, and things got serious. I remember the most accurate prediction was on June 11th, 2019. After I finished talking, I grabbed the mic from the host again. I went over and said, I still want to make 2 points. First, I said, about the situation in Hong Kong. It's like 2 trains colliding head-on. Second, if that day was Tuesday, June 11th, I said at the earliest, by tomorrow afternoon, that is, the afternoon or evening of June 12th, something big will break out in Hong Kong. When I mentioned the Jasmine Revolution, wow, the host was really shocked, really, and actually took a step back. He asked, why do you say that? I said, I know the personality of Cantonese people. Cantonese people, if you bully me up front, I can put up with it for a while, tolerate you for a bit, but once it explodes, things get completely out of control. So I said, let me check the train schedule for comparison. So why did I predict June 12th? Because on June 12th, Carrie Lam was going to push the extradition bill for its second reading. If she didn't push it, nothing would happen. But if she did, then Hong Kong people would take to the streets. And once they did, the so-called Hong Kong police, actually, they were public security, even armed police would be called in. I said HK police would crack down, causing clashes and a public eruption. I foresaw the Jasmine Revolution, and it really happened.
And it really did happen.
Yes, of course, it was accurate. Actually, I was able to do this through
Years in politics? This kind of insight and analysis is what allowed me to predict it. It's a skill in making judgments. Now, regarding the situation between the U.S. and Iran, a lot of friends are actually, it's getting old, this back and forth is dragging on. Trump said it wouldn't take this long. It's been dragging on for so long, but actually it's reached this point now. We're really curious to know in what form and when will it finally end?
Before we get into that question, let me quickly introduce Iran's geographical location. In the Chinese region, everyone knows, and to the right, it borders Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and the other Central Asian 5 countries, and then in the lower right corner is Pakistan. In its upper left corner is the Caspian Sea, and then comes Iraq. Within this area is the Persian Gulf, and then the Strait of Hormuz. Moving over from there, that's Saudi Arabia, and if you keep going in that direction, you reach the Mediterranean, and so on. So maybe now everyone doesn't quite remember where Iran is located. During the Cold War, Iran shared a border with the Soviet Union. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and then Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan became independent. Iran no longer borders Russia. If it did, that would mean something significant about Iran's geographic position. When I was describing it just now, maybe you started to get a sense of it. If you go north from there, you pass through the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, and the three small countries, and then you enter Russia. In the past, it used to border the Soviet Union. If you head west, you reach Iraq and Syria and so on, all the way to Israel. Then, if you go further up, you get to Turkey, and from there, you enter Europe. If you go south, you enter the Persian Gulf, then the Arabian Peninsula, and then passing through the Strait of Hormuz, then out to the Arabian Sea, and if you keep going to the right, I just mentioned Pakistan and Tajikistan. So it's basically a strategic crossroads, important from both the north and the south. Unless you don't interact at all, as long as you do, you have to go through me. That's the first reason why it's so.
Used this way, it pulls in the whole world.
It can drag the whole world in, and that's why it becomes a hot.
Right.
Everyone wants to fight over it. More importantly, I have oil and natural gas. Back when people were riding camels, this didn't matter at all. But now, with cars and airplanes, oil has become really important. That's why Iran has been wealthy for decades, ever since people started widely using oil. Iran's importance, along with that of its neighboring countries, has gradually increased. So its geographic location gives it strategic advantages, allowing it to play a key role here. It can maneuver freely, it can form alliances. An even more important point is that Iran is it's a proud nation. They are Persians.
Yes, Persians.
One of the 5 major ethnic groups in the Middle East. Persians, Arabs, then Jews, Kurds, and so on. Persians. Here, they've been fighting with the Arabs for thousands of years.
That's right.
They've been fighting for thousands of years. The Persians even fought wars with the Tang dynasties.
Yeah.
They even won some battles. Persian.
There's something in the Persians' bones. It's that desire in their blood to restore the Persian Empire. Exactly.
So, how should I put it? This becomes really important. It's a very solid foundation for the morale of this country's people. That's the key point. Okay, so that's their geography and history. But even more important is the factor of international politics. Iran has oil, so it joined OPEC. They hope to become the leader of the OPEC organization. Secondly, it's an Islamic country, but its sect only makes up 15%, while the other Sunnis account for 85%. Even though they're a minority, they want to be the leader of the Islamic world. I want to be the leader of OPEC, and I also want to be the leader of the Islamic world. On a slightly smaller scale, I want to be the leader of the Middle East and Mediterranean region. So this has given rise to their grand strategic vision, or you could call it ambition. Now that we've explained this background, let's go back and talk about the middle game. Now, looking at it, there are a few possibilities. The first possibility is, of course, the one that seems pretty obvious right now. But before, people didn't think so. When the war had just broken out, no one thought this was possible. The Revolutionary Guard gains even more power. That's the first possibility. The second possibility is if the upper leadership is significantly, after being weakened, its control over the whole society and the overall situation is also weakened. And then local areas or regional forces in distant places start to rise up, leading to small-scale conflicts. Civil war could break out, and in more serious cases, it could lead to fragmentation, like the Kurds in northern Iraq. Then in the south and other areas, various forces emerge, and then civil war breaks out. The situation in Syria is even worse. They're fighting even more brutally. The third possibility is what the US and Iran originally hoped for the most: revolution and regime change. I guess the US has temporarily given up on that idea. At least Trump has for now. Israel hasn't given up on that idea. So early on, I thought, it seems like the US and Israel, when it comes to war with Iran, they both have 3 levels of thinking: upper, middle, and lower. The lowest level goal is that Iran can't have nuclear weapons, can't have certain things, right? Then what about the middle level goal, and what's the top level goal? I said, on the surface, it looks like the US and Israel have the same top, middle, and bottom goals. But actually, they're not the same. I said, the US might be okay with stopping at the middle level, but Israel definitely wants to pursue the top level goal. So what is the top level goal? A complete revolution in Iran. Then the theocratic regime is overthrown, and the people rise up in revolution.
Because Iran has always said it wants to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. So Israel wants to...
Overthrowing them? Everyone can talk tough, but that's the main point. The question is, can you really do it, or do you really want to take action and do it? It looks like Netanyahu wants to do just that. Just now?
You mentioned 3 points. First, you think it's a revolution. The Revolutionary Guard will continue to grow stronger. Why do you predict that?
Because Generally speaking, we all know that Iran is a theocratic government. Then the Ayatollah holds the highest position. He has the ultimate decision-making power. For a country led by ideology or religion, this is a reasonable assumption. But in actual political operations, you'll see that this kind of theocratic leader, unless he himself truly possesses real political power. Otherwise, to some extent, when it comes to carrying things out, he has to rely on others. He can't just do it all by himself. If he just lies there and says a few words like, go fight a war for me, go kill people, go do this or that, then who's actually going to do it? In the past, it was Iran's army under the Pahlavi dynasty up until 1979 in Iran. After the Islamic Revolution, it became the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard. So the Revolutionary Guard became a truly powerful tool. It's both an instrument of execution and of operation. But the Revolutionary Guard isn't quite what most people think. The Revolutionary Guard isn't just a military force. Besides the military, it controls the country. Roughly about half, maybe a third to a half of it. It controls the lifeblood of the nation, oil, business, transportation, and more. Basically, all sorts of things. A lot, really. All of it is in their hands. So the Revolutionary Guard is kind of like a conglomerate. It's an organization driven by ideology, or maybe by religion. So if the theocracy is weakened, especially if the top leader is killed, after that, now Mushtaba still hasn't shown up, or maybe he's seriously ill. So this alky might just be sticking a breathing tube into Moshtaba's mouth. Just keeping you alive. As long as you're still breathing and your heart is still beating. I'm just saying, whatever Ayatollah says, you just do it.
The power is still in the hands of.
The Revolutionary Guard, because that's just the way things are.
In the US, it's ongoing. Under such constant fire, how does the Revolutionary Guard survive? Able to survive? On one hand, he's still hanging on, but on the other hand, why is he still able to grow stronger?
He still has oil, he still has natural gas, and back then, after confronting the United States, he started developing drones. As for nuclear weapons, they haven't made them yet, but they're probably very close. But even though they haven't built nuclear weapons yet, Iran really has made rapid progress. They've taken a step forward. They've developed a large number of missiles and drones. We've already seen that. But what really allows Iran to survive, I think, is even more about foreign aid and outside support.
Just now you mentioned that Iran still has oil. The Strait of Hormuz has been repeatedly blocked and reopened, with Iran charging fees and so on. Actually, many ships can't get through, but there are some ships that do make it across. So just now you especially mentioned foreign aid. Could you elaborate on that? Tell us a bit about it.
Of course, in the past, most of the foreign aid came from Russia, and later, a large part came from the Chinese Communist Party. Didn't we just talk about the geography? If you go to the right from Iran, you reach Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. The 5 Central Asian countries, if you go down to the lower right, you reach Pakistan, the Tajik ethnic group, and Pakistan. Among those 5 countries, there are a few specific ones. Some have a very good relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. Pakistan, for example, has quite a strong relationship with the CCP. They even call it Iron Brother. So isn't the CCP promoting the Belt and Road Initiative? With things like computers and so on, Iran is a hub, a very important hub. So for the CCP, Iran is a rare and exceptional talent. First, I can get oil from there. Second, if you have ambitions to dominate the region, I support your ambitions. While I support your ambitions to dominate, I also make use of your support, those agents of yours. So the CCP also makes use of Iran and the agents that Iran uses as well. The purpose of stirring up trouble locally is to break America's advantage in this area. On one hand, I help Iran, and on the other hand, I undermine America's advantage. At the same time, I also reach in, my CCP hand also reaches in. Because for the CCP, this region isn't just about oil. There are other regional interests as well. Political, geopolitical, what else is there? I use this to mess with the United States.
To tie up the United States.
At the very least, I distract you and spread your resources then. Isn't everyone saying now that with the US fighting Iran, they're putting in so much effort that it seems like they don't have much left to help Taiwan? They even have a bit of trouble just protecting themselves. Isn't that exactly their strategic goal? This is something we Chinese talked about for thousands of years, and now they're using it for fun. So for the Chinese Communist Party, this place really is a strategic setup. Just think, Iran is a good example.
But now there's a problem coming from Beijing. Of course, what they're saying is that they're supporting Iran from behind the scenes, and then stirring up chaos in the Middle East. From their perspective, the longer this chaos drags on, the more it ties up the United States. The bigger the trouble they create, the better it is for them. But there's a key issue here, which is the very crucial Strait of Hormuz. Because for the Chinese Communist Party, 45% to 50% of its oil imports have to go through the Strait of Hormuz. The more this area gets blocked, the more the situation falls into a stalemate. In fact, this is also another kind of setback for its oil imports. So in this process, could they end up playing with fire and end up shooting themselves in the foot? Trying to be opportunistic, but ending up with nothing.
Of course that's possible. So they have to be extremely careful with how they handle this. Okay, so he tells Iran, if we block it, will you let my ships through? Has that ever happened? Yeah, and the US sees that if I impose a blockade, you're not going to come over either. Then others might say, if the US jumps in directly, it's kind of like tearing off the mask and showing our cards. It's like I'm standing here with the Chinese Communist Party, confronting them. So for the Chinese Communist Party, the longer this Iran issue drags on, sure, that ties up the US, leaving them distracted and immobilized. But since it could hurt me too, how to tie them up without self-harm, that's what they're working on. They're calculating, which is why mixing talks and fighting is a solid strategy. So why is it like this? Iran has always been like this, always. On one hand, the Persians also have their own cunning side. Yeah, for a nation with thousands of years of history, you accumulate a lot of wisdom over time. This kind of thing, you can't not understand it. Otherwise, if you were up against the Arabs, they would have taken care of you a long time ago. So the Persians have their strengths. If you combine Persian wisdom and cunning with Chinese wisdom and cunning, then playing against America, well, that's still doable, right? That's the first point. Second, you just mentioned this weakness. It's true because if, of course, Israel also doesn't understand it. That's why Chinese people really dislike Israel, because when Israel cuts off Iran's hands and cuts off Iran's agents, they're also cutting off my CCP's hands, both of you. So basically, these things are connected. Right, so that's why the CCP especially dislikes Israel now, but there's nothing they can do about it, because for its own survival, Israel has to do these things. That's right. Well, Hamas attacked me first, didn't it?
It's about survival.
Netanyahu sees this as a battle for survival. You attack, I fight back, it's going to be painful, just as I said from the start.
If Iran and the CCP use this method to tie up the United States, wouldn't that create a real vacuum in security in the Indo-Pacific region? Will the security of the Indo-Pacific region be threatened?
It should be said that the CCP would think so. It might see a bigger opportunity, but it's not an easy thing to do. This issue is complex and currently off limits. Even without US or Japanese aid, the CCP would struggle to seize Taiwan despite its deep infiltration and cognitive warfare. Beijing knows that taking the island remains a daunting challenge. As long as Taiwan has 50% to 60% of its forces able to fight, with Taiwan's missile capabilities and all that, if you can hit me, I can hit you too. You might be able to destroy me. Even if Taiwan gets wrecked, as long as I can hit a few places like Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen, if those places get smashed to pieces, you won't be able to take it. Not to mention anything else, if I just hit Shanghai or those surrounding economic zones and industrial areas, you won't be able to handle it. Plus, a lot of your oil tanks are right along the coast. We all know that. So even without help from the US or Japan, attacking Taiwan would still be tough for them. What's more, it looks like the US and Japan will probably step in, especially Japan. They probably can't stand by. If you attack Taiwan, they'll have no choice but to get involved. So for China, all they can do is hold on to a lot of hope. But they likely know it won't happen. The CCP sees a window of opportunity if post-election chaos hits both Taiwan and the US simultaneously. If both erupt at once, then they see that as a golden opportunity, but it's not that easy. Speaking of the situation in Taiwan, of course, the CCP won't just sit around waiting for chaos to happen. They'll try to find ways to make it happen. They'll create chaos themselves. They'll do this, both toward Taiwan and the United States. But I think it's unlikely that things will get too out of hand. Any issues will likely be localized. Taiwan's election system is stable and fair. It's straightforward. Voters cast ballots, which are then held up and shown to everyone for transparency. It might seem kind of clumsy, but people feel it's really reliable and trustworthy. And then each party can send representatives to every polling and counting station to observe. So there's almost no chance of cheating.
Now, as for the U.S. strikes against Iran in this war, how do you analyze the current psychological state of the top leaders in the Chinese Communist Party? Do you think these kinds of strikes, for them, are a kind of strategic opportunity for the Indo-Pacific region? Or do you think such intense strikes will make them even more cautious?
First, they'll be worried about their own safety. You actually took out all of Iran's top leaders in one go. And then Israel also took out all of Hezbollah's top leaders, right? So they're thinking, what if the US does the same thing? To deal with us, of course, they're also thinking about using this approach against Taiwan. Of course, this issue has two sides to it. On one hand, they're on guard against the US using this method against them. But at the same time, they're also thinking about how to keep bombing Taiwan's top leaders. So it's a tangled and complicated situation. That's why they're like this. Whether it's the Russia Ukraine war or the wars in the Middle East, the lessons they've learned are twofold. One is how to protect themselves, and the other is how to go on the offensive. But for them, self preservation is probably the bigger issue.
Do you think the Russia Ukraine war has already been going on for 4 years now? This kind of prolonged warfare situation. Now, is it possible that the war between the United States and Iran could head in that same direction?
It's not likely because the United States absolutely does not want to get dragged into that kind of war. But when it comes to Israel, I can't say for sure. That is, the US might pull back to a certain extent. The US might adopt the same strategy as the Chinese Communist Party. I'll stay in the background, just support Israel in doing this, but I won't get directly involved. That's probably the most likely scenario in the short to medium term. That is, the US temporarily holds back, and then Israel and Iran engage in small scale exchanges. A furnace. That's basically it.
Why do you think the US will temporarily hold back?
Because there are a lot of factors for the US. First, fighting now isn't good for me with the November election coming up. Iran and the CCP behind them also want to drag this out until then. We'll discuss the CCP's role more in a bit, because if it drags on until November and Trump loses just one state, things will get a lot easier for them. Second, in 2 months, Trump will be a lame duck they can ignore. Then they can act freely. So the US will likely wait until after the election to decide what to do next.
So, a very clear focal point, a turning point to watch, is the midterm election.
Right?
What do y'all think? What are your thoughts on Professor Mengju Sang's analysis? Feel free to share your opinions with us in the comment section and let's discuss together. If you have any questions, please also leave us a comment. We hope to have the opportunity to invite Professor Mengju again in the future to answer your question. What actions do you think the United States might take after the midterm elections?
It depends on how well the elections go. If Trump does really well, or if the Republican Party does really well, they don't even have to do exceptionally well. As long as either party has even a slight advantage in either chamber, then they'll have more leverage moving forward.
He'll still be aggressive.
He's bold.
Aggressive.
He'll go on the offensive. The tough talk he's giving today, he'll actually follow through when the time comes. Of course, he'll go back and count how many missiles he has left and what else he still has. How much of everything is left, and to what extent can he keep fighting? Right now, he actually knows very well. Back then, we also calculated it at the time. During the first phase of the fighting, the best strategy would have been to just take over that island directly, Hawk Island. The reason he didn't dare to occupy it was because the first unit he sent, as soon as he sent out his top unit, things went wrong. Then he couldn't get it through Congress, and that ended up affecting the election. That's why he didn't dare to do it. So I guess if he were to occupy Hawk Island, it would be after the election, and only if the election went really smoothly for him. If he waited until then, Iran would be in a tough spot, so Iran's current strategy is just to keep talking and negotiating, and that's also the strategy the Chinese Communist Party is using. So in the medium to short term, this is basically the situation. As for Trump, I should put it this way, people look at him like this mainly because they don't like him. I think a lot of times he's underestimated. He's really underestimated. So do you think Trump, this time, it was when he hadn't made any moves at all? How many of these international political experts, scholars, or journalists do you think, even those high-ranking military officials, how many people would have thought that the US and Israel would go bomb Iran? No one really expected it, right? But they did bomb it. How many people actually saw that coming? Or thought that they'd go all the way to Venezuela to help out and just let it happen like that? Yeah, it was totally unexpected. Completely caught everyone off guard. So when it gets ruthless, it can really go all out. But then why does it sometimes hold back? It's because they have a lot to consider. For a major power, it's not just about handling one issue. A big country has to look at the entire international situation. It's like a global chessboard. They see the whole board. That's how it is, like the Chu River and Han border in chess. So right here, my responsibility is to push things forward like this, but I also have to take care of what's happening over there. On one side, I have to deal with Iran, with the Houthis, with Hezbollah, and so on. On the other side, I have to handle Maduro, Cuba, and others. And then over here, I have to deal with the war in Ukraine. What I'm even more concerned about is, what do I have to deal with regarding the Chinese Communist Party? So he has to take all his resources and all the issues into consideration. Then he decides how much he can do here, how hard he can hit. So when you hear taco, it's not just, look, he's doing taco again.
Professor Ming, you actually just mentioned a very important detail. Do you think that what Trump is considering now is how to allocate his troops and firepower? so that it doesn't interfere with his strategic stance toward the Chinese Communist Party.
Troop strength and firepower are just one part of it. The main thing is, where is my entire country's policy focus? Am I focusing on this issue or, of course, when focusing on an issue, every leader tries to prioritize the problems in front of them. So for him, the final issue is dealing with the other aspects of the Chinese Communist Party. I also have to resolve those. That's the first point. The second is civil war and division. That is, if the RGC's control weakens. Because besides the Algerian government, there are also local volunteer organizations like militias or paramilitary groups under them, and they also have a certain amount of armed power. And with a certain degree of enforcement power, Israel completely understood this point. When Israel joined the United States, they targeted these groups, weakening your forces. After that, it allowed ordinary people to rise up. But so far, it still hasn't succeeded. However, let me say again, we still can't rule out this possibility. This is the second possibility I just mentioned. The third is revolution and regime change. Originally, it was Israel and the United States. But Israel should be very familiar with the internal situation in Iran. They've also infiltrated and done all sorts of things and so on. So after everyone finished analyzing with Mossad, they reported to Netanyahu. After Netanyahu accepted it, he went to lobby Trump. That lobbying was successful, not because he deceived Trump, but because he and Trump said, based on our understanding of Iran, if we do this, if we kill their leader over there, their people will be left without direction and things will get chaotic. Then what can we do? Trump is not acting alone either. After listening, he decided he would definitely hand this case over to his national security team to let them handle it. His CCP team, or to be more specific, he handed it over to his Iran team for analysis. He asked them, do you think Netanyahu's suggestion is appropriate or not? After their analysis, they said there was a high chance it could succeed. Everyone thinks that we need a very high probability before we act, but that's not the case when it comes to real warfare. Usually, when we're at war, as long as I have a 20 to 30% chance, I'll make a decision. You can't wait until that moment, because by then, there's already a mechanism for chaos in place. So I guess Netanyahu and Trump said, let's do it this way, but I don't have enough firepower. You have enough firepower, so you bomb. After you're done bombing, then if they all get bombed to death over there, what am I supposed to do? We'll just wait and coordinate our efforts. Because last time, with the experience from Operation Heavy Hammer, they felt it was reliable. So when the US took action, they bombed, and it was successful. But the problem is, the result they most wanted to see didn't happen. Yeah, you saw the US bombing. After it was over, the US made a statement, and Netanyahu also made a statement, saying to Iran, people, this is your best chance. Hurry up and rise up. Isn't that right? Right? We've been watching this for a while. Let me say it again. This could still happen in the future. It's not impossible. It's still possible because the Iranian people, especially the younger generation in Iran, in the past few years, during the elections, they did rise up before, but they were suppressed, right? Later, I heard that tens of thousands of people were killed or arrested. Because I remember it very clearly. It was probably almost 10 years ago. There was an election in Iran. The reformists and the conservatives were more religious. This group, the reformists, were younger, mainly made up of college students and intellectuals. Even some business people were part of it. According to those young people, they believed the reformists would win. But when the votes were counted, everywhere the reformist votes went down, and the conservative or religious, the radical religious groups' votes went up. So those students realized something was wrong. Then, at that time, people had already started using cameras and cell phones to record a lot of footage. They wanted to share it internationally, and as luck would have it, an Iranian college student came across FreeGate. Oh, FreeGate is a tool created by Falun Gong practitioners to help rescue Falun Gong practitioners in mainland China. They developed a tool for getting over the firewall or breaking through internet censorship. It was discovered by an Iranian student, and that student became a catalyst for spreading it. College students all over Iran started using FreeGate to send out information, using up FreeGate's resources. Basically, FreeGate was exhausted. I remember very clearly that FreeGate was forced to issue an announcement. They said, we know our Iranian friends really care about us, and so on. But basically, this tool was created to help Chinese people. So we asked our Iranian friends to refrain from using this. To use it
in this way?
Iran is deeply trusted around the world. They said this tool is about freedom, so why are you restricting me? There was no way, so they had to find other friends and websites to support them, and they barely made it through those few days. So what am I trying to say here? There really is a strong desire for reform within Iran. That power, right? I think that's what it is. And this is exactly what the US and Israel originally wanted. They hoped for a force that could bring about regime change. But so far, it hasn't happened. However, if, because of this, tens of thousands of students were arrested or even killed, then that's Iran for you. It's like their version of the Tiananmen Square, in fact.
Right.
Yeah, but the seeds of this, the seeds of revolution, are still there. But as I just mentioned, first, the IRGC becomes even more authoritarian. Second, there could be civil war and division. And third, revolution. But if none of these things happen up to now and Trump still has to face the situation, then what should he do?
Right, what then? Professor, could you talk about this issue? Before we move on, I actually wanted to follow up on what you just said about regime change. In recent years, Iran has indeed seen a lot of protest movements. We've seen this whether it was triggered by the incidents a few years ago or, as you just mentioned, the elections. But why is that? With the United States calling for it and Israel calling for it as well, and even with Iran's top leadership having been shaken, Iranians still haven't risen up.
Didn't Marx say that religion is the opium of the poor? For these totalitarian or authoritarian leaders, they would say, I need opium because without it, I have no way to manipulate or control the people. So I use political parties to control the people. What I mean is, now you can see Iran launching. Wasn't there a funeral last time? Didn't they claim that all those people came out for it? Even if the photos are staged, they're fake. But in society, the forces supporting the theocratic government are still very strong and widespread. In other words, among the general public, it's very common. So I think that's the most crucial point.
Is also why the Iranian people didn't rise up this time.
Right.
We've seen, whether it's from the situation in Iran and the Middle East or the ongoing developments. What about global security in the Indo-Pacific region? Actually, politics has already entered a period of multiple flashpoints. So if you could, would you be able to give our audience a framework for observation? In the next 6 months, besides what we just discussed about the United States, the results of the midterm elections are one observation point. Are there any other potential flashpoints or turning points you think might emerge elsewhere?
The key is the situation in mainland China. Right now, their economy is really bad and just keeps getting worse. In a bad economy, unrest grows, from job losses and online conflict to major protests. Official public clashes are foreseeable, it's just a matter of suppression strength. Crucially, with the CCP's fifth plenary session this November, its outcome and resulting changes bear watching. Other than that, we'll probably have to wait until next year or mid-year for anything else to possibly happen. Right now, I'm not going to worry about it. We can just see what your timeline will be. Looking at your timeline, it's the 21st National Congress of the CCP from September to November 2027. So the fifth plenary session can be considered a preparatory meeting for the 21st National Congress. Then, early next year, probably between February and March, they'll hold the sixth plenary session. We can then look at their 21st National Congress, and in between these events, changes in personnel, promotions or demotions, and so on. Especially possible changes in the members of the Politburo or the Politburo Standing Committee, if we look at all these together. If we observe these things, it'll be quite helpful for us in judging the direction things will take in the future. So for me personally, besides paying attention to these issues, I'll also be taking a close look at the development on the mainland that I just mentioned.
This also involves the issue of Xi Jinping's cower. That's right.
Okay.
These are all very important moments to watch. And in the near future, we'll see how things develop. If any of you have insights or opinions, please share them with us in the comments section. Today, we are very honored to have invited Professor Mingzhu Zhang as our guest on our program.
Thank you to the host, and thank you to all the viewers as well.
All right, thank you all for watching. We'll see you again real soon, next Tuesday at the same time.